So the kind of official title for our panel is rather dry, I suppose. Utility of tokens and digital assets. I'm sure we can make something of it, though. Maybe just to start off, if you guys can introduce yourselves and your companies and give a bit of a background about exactly, kind of what you're up to in terms of blockchain and I guess, yeah, I just kind of leave it from that, and then we'll start the questions from there. So, Leo, if you want to go first.
Sure, thanks, John. Hello, everyone. So I run ClanPlay. I co-founded it a couple of years ago, and we're behind the highest-rated messaging app for gamers called ClanPlay. You can find it on the stores. We have 4.8 stars and close to 2 million users. It's like WhatsApp with tools for games. Our most notable one is Clash Royale, and we were featured inside Clash Royale by Supercell last April. So that was a nice recognition. In the last half a year, we've pivoted, and now we're working to create value for gamer skills. We're trying to create a platform where players can monetize their skills. So this comes in several ways. The long-term goal is to let anyone pay players for services inside games. So if you want to recruit strong players to your clan, you can pay them. If you want to have your clan members, existing ones, play harder, you can pay them, and so on. And the intermediate goal is to let players test their skills, wager their skills against others. So you think you're good at PUBG, you'll put your 100 tokens, I'll put mine, we'll play, and the best man takes the pot, right? That's what we're up to. We've had our ICO live, we've raised pre-sale funding, and we're actually closing the ICO and not proceeding with it, and we're going to rely on our funding and go directly to usability.
Yeah, awesome. So my name's Chris. I'm a community manager at Horde, and we're enabling true ownership in video games. So we have an SDK. There's also a crowdfunding component, so everything that you develop in the game is instantly sellable. And we also have an exchange that is going to be allow anybody to go ahead and sell the items in their game or spend the items in their game in the real world. So we're partnered with Omisego on that. If anyone here is familiar with them, they have a white label wallet that would integrate with any sort of payment processor. So we'll work with them, and yeah, that's a quick summary.
Hi, I'm Keith. So we're new. We're Terra Virtua. We're going through an ICO right now, which is fun. And we are, there's 5 of us. We're all video game veterans. I was 18 years at Electronic Arts. My compatriots were, a long time at PlayStation and Ocean, going all the way back. So we're, come from the video game background. So Terra Virtua is a subscription-based VR platform. We're getting a very good reaction to what the thing is going to be, and we're funding it through an ICO. The reason we're doing that's twofold. Firstly, because the currency of the platform will be a Terra token. So to get into it, first of all, the atrium that you'll go in, if you imagine you put a headset on, you're in an atrium and there's a bunch of gates. To be in the atrium will be free. It'll be a social experience across the devices. It doesn't matter what device you're wearing for the VR. And then behind the gates will be, first of all, games. And so to unlock the gates, you'll need a subscription, which you'll pay in your local currency. We don't want friction of people having to use a cryptocurrency to get through there. But then once you're in, the premium content, which could be, merchandise, it could be, add-on content, it could be film, it could be esports events, whatever, as it grows, that will be from the currency, and that's why we're doing an ICO.
Cool, good. So talking about kind of tokens and assets, I guess I've kind of picked up a trend in the talk so far that there's game developers seem to be moving more towards items. So that seems to be like the simplest thing to get across to gamers. Keith, you have a token. Chris, you're more item-based. Leo, you have a token as well. So, I mean, how do you? I guess the guys with tokens. So for this question, kind of Leo and Keith, do you see that kind of token as being something you can easily explain to gamers? Do you just kind of sell it as like an in-app currency or a digital currency, or how are you approaching that? Because it can be, obviously if you go down the route of this is like Bitcoin, then suddenly different things start to happen in people's brains, rather than this is like a an in-game gold or something.
Well, of course. I mean, gamers are so accustomed to having virtual currencies. So the process of paying, going through a payment mechanism and ending up with a virtual currency that you have a representation for in the platform is so natural for all gamers. I don't think that's a barrier. Going through KYC to make the payment is indeed a barrier and it's hard. But once you have that accumulated tokens, and let's assume that in the beginning you can more sort of airdrop them to your users to get early adoption until you figure out the right onboarding process.
Can I just actually stop you there? Because I think that's really interesting, this airdrop thing. Can you unpick that a little bit? What's your thinking about
Sure.
how you do that?
So airdrop, just as a short intro, is when you freely give away your tokens without requiring anything from your users. It's used in the purest form to create people with interest in your token. So when you give your token to 1,000 people, even if it's a fraction of it, they're then starting to follow you. That's the theory, and be interested in your updates and hopefully engage with your community. We have not done that, and our approach doing that, because we have a large audience and we're able to build audiences very quickly, is to require players to demonstrate their skills. So our approach to airdrops is on the platform. We're going to launch tournaments for PUBG in about a month, which is exciting on its own because I play and I want to compete with people. And then the performers, the best performers in these tournaments will get tokens, right? So you register for free, 1,000 people in a daily tournament a few times a day, and top 100 players get tokens. So it's sort of an airdrop, right? Because there's not a lot of requirements aside from going on to your playing activity afterwards. But what you get from that is you get early adopters, early users that you can test the platform with, right? So we'll have hundreds of people every day joining the token users group, and then they can participate in wagers without going through KYC and difficult onboarding.
Keith, I mean, obviously you're slightly different because you're a platform, so there's a slightly different thing going on there. So how are you thinking of it?
Yeah, so I feel quite strongly about why having a blockchain and a cryptocurrency in games is a really important thing for a player. So, just talk about EA, and it applies to any publisher, so I'm not singling out EA. But Need for Speed and FIFA and Sims, they all have their own currencies, but they're not transferable and they're worthless if you leave the franchise. And I'm not picking on EA, that's symptomatic of most video game companies. So, the beauty of having an in-platform currency, and, we'll be one of the first to do this, and certainly in VR, as VR is expected to grow dramatically over the next 4 or 5 years, the currency will be usable across all the games that are in there, and equally, if you make content, you can sell it. If you win an esports tournament, you can win money, and then you can cash out. And that, for me, is profound. I think the bit that we're working on now, and we've pretty much come to a conclusion, is that tokens, while you're within the platform, you won't go through an exchange. We'll have a virtual exchange within there so that you don't go through the clumsiness of smart contracts all the time. We'll make that much more simple. It's only when you actually want to take the tokens out and exchange for real money or another crypto that you'll actually then go through an exchange to make that much easier.
So, what's the Horde approach?
Yes, I'll jump in there a little bit. So we actually will have a token. It's not, okay. Yeah, it's not out yet, but we're doing a lot of building first, then we'll do the token. The way that we're thinking about using the token is sort of in a way, maybe flipping this on its head a little bit, is it's in one aspect almost like tokenizing the players in a sense. So if you have players that are holding a number of tokens, you can easily identify who out there in your ecosystem would be best to start playing your game. So on the topic of airdrops, that becomes a perfect model for distribution, is instantly you're able to find out how much people are invested in a certain sort of ecosystem across a wide variety of different games, what they're currently engaged in, and you're able to go ahead and market to them by just providing them with items to begin playing your game. Yeah. So that's, I think, what we're most excited about.
So I guess we have to deal with the question of utility, which I don't really necessarily want to do. It's a kind of a clumsy word, but I guess it has different, I guess a legal definition, I suppose, which is often what it's used. But I guess a more interesting definition is actually just saying this token, what's it actually used for. I don't know if anyone wants to dive into the technical legal bit of utility. I don't know, like the SEC has basically said it's looked at blockchain projects and seen none with any utility. So obviously they're using utility in a certain, I guess, financial sense. But other than that, I mean, do we just see tokens? Are they just a form of currency, or can they be more than that? Because I guess what the idea is, in one sense, for any blockchain system is it becomes like a perpetual motion machine. So people are kind of using a token. It's obviously has value outside if you want to do it to take it out to fiat, but for it to really work, it has to be useful within the system and kind of be recycled in the system for various kind of I guess agencies, whether players or advertisers or games developers and stuff, and it just keeps going round and round and round and kind of building value. So how have you thought about kind of, I guess they call it economic flow or token economy and stuff? Have you thought about that for your projects?
Sure, and the token economy is such an elusive term, right? I've heard it from investors that don't want to proceed as a way to describe their disinterest, and I've heard it from interested users as a way to try to understand what the fuck we're doing. But it means a lot to it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Utility outside of the US can be described legally. I feel more comfortable. And we have taken a very active approach in trying to classify our tokens as utility before we issue them, so that we will be able to sell them out of Israel, where we are incorporated. They will be issued in a different country, fully owned subsidiary, just as a short legal overview if it's interesting for anyone. And to your question about the utility of tokens, look, we're in a space where we're issuing assets that we want to become valuable, right? And for any asset in the world to become valuable, you need to create demand for it. Now, there are challenges with creating alternatives to your tokens. And for example, Keith, what you're describing as having less friction is also, by allowing fiat payments to some of the services on the platform, is also taking away the value, some of the value of your utility tokens. Whereas if all the functionality in the platform, for better or worse, is done only through token, then you keep more value at the token level and less value at the equity level. We've always had these discussions with our investors, and all of our investors so far have had equity in the company, that if they invest in tokens, they want all the value of the venture to be transferred into the token, right? And the more you extract towards your equity, the more you hurt your token holders in their perspective, and I do somewhat agree. So we're trying to preserve all the utility in the platform to be done only via the token. And we'll work hard to try to solve that onboarding, not needing to go into it. But it becomes easier over time. There are APIs by exchanges, and aside from the initial registration, they do make the payment afterwards easier, some of them with credit cards. And then if everything you do on the platform you can only do with the token, assume people are able to get it from various countries, then you increase its value. And then your own reserve increases in value as well, right? Which is what we want to do. Because we are also in a unique business where we hold a pile of valuable things that we can give away and bootstrap our community and incentivize partners and so on. And to do that, we need to bring up the value of our tokens. Sorry if I went on.
No, it's good.
Yeah, so when it comes to utility for tokens, the biggest thing I think that qualifies a token as being a utility token, that's like what we're defining right now, is that holding that token allows you to do something that you couldn't possibly do without holding that token. So if anyone here isn't already familiar with a project like Augur, I think they're an incredible example from the crypto space where you need to hold that token in order to act as an oracle in their system. So in order to put real life information onto the blockchain, and then that information can be referenced for any other project. But you need to hold that token in order to act as a player in that game, basically. So I think the more we see any sort of in-game item or token being used in that way, where you actually have to hold it to access some feature in the game, it would sort of be like a key in some sense. That's only going to secure your game as being more valid in a legal sense. Not that I'm a lawyer, and so, but like that's my understanding right now. So I think when you can design it in that way, that's when you're setting yourself up for the greatest level of success, both from potentially a legal standpoint, I don't know, but also just from an investor standpoint, from like getting users excited and interested in adopting your game. Yeah.
In terms of, Keith, for the TerraVector tokens, are you just using those basically as a payment method, or how you going to use them in a wider community kind of sense?
Yeah, payments and rewards. So once you're in, then from there, and I'll just go back to the obvious challenge there on subscription. So subscription will be in fiat, but the player will have the choice. Once they're in, we know player behaviour that the upfront payment to get into an experience is never enough. They want to buy other stuff. So once they're in, they will pay, I won't make that assumption. They will have the opportunity to buy, adopt, experience other content, and all of that will be via the token. Our plan to begin with is behind those gates I kind of visualise will be gaming experiences. Very soon after, we've got a fairly short timeline of within a couple of years of launch, we expect to have esports as an experience, we expect to have cinematic, we expect to have live sports broadcast, whether that's F1, MotoGP, football, soccer, all of these things are now being filmed either 360 or actually 3D VR. We expect those to be available, and those will be paid for with tokens. And then user-generated content. I didn't mention this, but as part of our relationship with Epic and Unreal, we're building it in the Unreal Engine. We're creating what we're going to be calling Terraformer, and it's going to be a very simple tool for players to create their own user-generated content, and then, of course, they'll be able to sell, pass on, and again, that transaction will be on the blockchain and in the token.
I guess in the wider sense, something that's kind of been alluded to earlier on. Obviously, there's kind of blockchain games, which is, I guess, I see a subset of the larger kind of blockchain experience. When we start talking about tokens, obviously, we've seen over the last 2 weeks some fairly large volatility. And I do kind of wonder for you guys who are either have tokens out or planning to have tokens, is there anything you can do to kind of negate that kind of situation? Obviously, if you're, to a degree, if the fiat value of your token goes down, that's not within your control, but obviously that's not great necessarily for the business, and certainly not great for any, I guess, kind of power users who are maybe speculating a little bit on the token as well. Is there anything you can do to kind of negate that, or?
Well, so anyone who's been through an ICO knows the constant pressure of when exchange, right? So a minute after the small investor buys your token for $100, they keep on pressuring you in all available social channels to go on exchanges, which you naturally don't want to do. But even if you don't, your token will go on EtherDelta and other decentralized exchanges, and it will drop in value because of all of these small investors wanting to cash out and move on to the next, especially when the market is going down, right? And there's no liquidity, and there's sell orders, and someone will fill them up at a much lower price. So that's a natural occurrence. I think several ways to mitigate it. First of all, if you're lucky enough to raise some of your ICO in fiat currency, then you're less impacted. Whereas if you raised it naturally, mostly in Ethereum or Bitcoin, then you watch the charts all day long. And you have restrictions, right? So if you want to, even if you got $1 million in Ether, you can't withdraw all of that to your bank account. Let's say you have a bank account that accepts your Ethereum originated transactions. So I think when an Ethereum ETF is coming up, or futures are in debate now, and this could be a way to play straightforward financial insurances, right? So you buy a short position on Ethereum if you have a lot of Ethereum, and you just fix your rate. So you won't benefit when it goes down because your short positions will lose value, but you won't lose. And I think for us businesses which are striving to not be speculators, this could be an effective way.
Yeah, so if you're interested in designing an ecosystem that isn't subject to such crazy volatility, you could do a couple things. You could integrate some kind of a price ceiling and price floor where you would keep a certain reserve where a player could sell the asset back to the game designer for a fixed price, so you just have to keep a reserve. That's kind of has a lot of overhead to that strategy. The other thing you could do, honestly, if you're not interested in creating your own token, is you could use like one of many stable coins that are out there. And there are some that are decentralized in a pretty effective way, I think. So MakerDAO has a stable coin called DAI that works very well. There's another one, full disclosure, that I'm invested in is True USD, which is by Trust Token. And there's many others that are out there. 2 more were just announced this week, so there's options to stabilize your economy.
Yeah, I guess not really too much to add to that. You know, I think what it is a wake-up call to businesses that you don't hold on too long. So if you've raised via Ethereum, that if you need working capital, you're exchanging that pretty quickly and not holding on and hoping. I think that's the big wake-up call for now.
Good. Okay. So I've got a few more questions, and we'll see if there's anything from the floor. I mean, something you raised, Leo, is looking at item sales. I guess we call them kind of before games launch. Excuse me. So like item pre-sales, I suppose, and that has, you know, most games do attempt to do that now. I think there's a few success stories that kind of drive that, and then there's quite a lot of actually quite hard failures that aren't talked about very much. What's your feeling? Is that, I mean, I guess it's a game developer's kind of strategy. But do you think
so we don't develop games,
money?
but I come from Plarium. I served 5 years as a VP Biz Dev at Plarium. It's a large games company. And I've watched with pleasure the success of games like Gods Unchained, raised $1.5 million or $1.2 million.
Which is the really big success story, isn't it? Quite a surprise, I think, to everyone.
Yeah, because if you think of the production costs of creating 380 cards, that will be between $100,000 and $150,000 if your team is not based in the US. And then you can do that as pre-production, and before you create all of your game mechanics and sell those for $1 million, it's a great way to fund your indie business. Not so valid for medium-scale studios, so I don't think we're in an era where medium-scale game developers can sustainably fund themselves through revenues of item sales pre-production. But for indies, it's a great tool. The thing is that a lot of indies are not that proficient in marketing, naturally. They're good at creating games, and they're a small team. And when you are a small team operating on a low budget, A, you don't have marketing budget. B, there's no reason to have a marketing specialist in your team because salaries and no budget. So when you want to sell anything, right, you need people to know about it. And unless you're deep in the community and you have lots of friends that can spread the word, it's hard to do so. And maybe the market for pre-sale item agencies will bloom before the pre-sale platforms like Engine and BitGuild and their likes will get sufficient audiences. That's my thought about it.
From a Horde perspective, I guess, I mean, you're all about items, so it's obviously you get very early in your life's kind of in the company's life scale at the moment. But you know, is that something you would be interested in doing? You know, taking on that kind of agency type role and helping out developers by promoting kind of sales, pre-developed. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we have it'll be a whole distribution platform, and that's involved in the crowd sale aspect of it. So developers can go ahead and they can do the crowd sale on the platform. But like I mentioned earlier, one of the utilities that we're exploring for the Horde token is that anyone who holds the Horde token would get a fee of items generated from any of the crowd sale. So if a project were to do a crowd sale through Horde, then say it's like 5%, or you could probably set it out, we haven't really decided, but say it's 5% of your in-game items could be distributed to anyone who's holding the Horde token. And so, I mean, through that you end up promoting your game quite a bit, or you could do target marketing.
So it's kind of like an airdrop thing, isn't it?
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah.
Wouldn't that classify it as a security?
The Horde token, well, that's potentially.
Participation in revenues?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, that's something that we're exploring with legal, yeah. So.
From the Terra Virtua point of view, I mean, is that kind of crowdfunding something you go for, or is that, because I mean, you're a platform, so you have that, I guess you have that opportunity because developers will be coming to you as kind of the portal.
Yeah, I suppose that as far as the currency goes, there's two ways we approached it. So initially we did airdrops. We, with some success actually at the very beginning. We're more focused at the moment on private funds, and then we'll have a proper public sale at the
Oh, you
very
will do?
end. Yeah, that's the current plan. I mean, we're right in the middle of it, so you know, a lot of it rests on how successful we are with what we raise. We've raised enough to
I was gonna say,
be.
in general, how are you finding that kind of ICO process? Because it is quite rocky. It seems some people seem to be very positive about it, but equally it just seems to be quite hard to get money out of people these days.
Yeah, it's bloody awful, really. So it's tough. I think it's not helped by a few things, to be honest. One, the decline in the value. Secondly, regulation popping up in different countries. That doesn't help. I think what mitigates that is at the very beginning of the process, we're all new to it. I think everybody is. I think a year on, I think we all wish we'd done this a year ago and we'd be away. I think we've got a lot of traction on the project. So nobody's questioning the value of Terra Virtua as a project. I think everybody we speak to, whether it's potential partners or investors, they like where we're heading with what Terra Virtua is going to become. And I don't think anybody's questioning the potential success of it. So it's interesting how that part of it doesn't really become necessarily the issue. It's just actually getting people to say, yeah, I'm really interested, and then actually parting with hard-earned cash. So all that said, I think we've changed our strategy over the months, and I think if we'd, knew now what we knew back then, we would have done it slightly different. So where we are right now in talking to larger institutional investors and syndicates, we're having a lot more traction. So we have raised, and we're kind of where we are now is in the position that we can do more with what we raise from here on in. It doesn't mean that we can't get going. We can absolutely make something of Terra Virtua. What will enable us to do more of is more marketing, and actually we can sign up more exclusive deals by part funding or fully funding VR projects. So that's where we are. It's a tiring, exhausting process, I would say. And it involves a lot of travel, to Asia particularly. And, but we're definitely getting there. The good thing I think is, if it's the debate between a security and a utility token, by having a real consumer-facing product or service, which Terra Virtua is, that makes the whole thing much easier because you can tangibly show what it is that you're really driving. And it will be nice when you get to a point where the money's raised and then you're actually getting on with building what it is you're set out to do.
And I think in some ways there is this, there is a positive in the sense that companies, if you like Terra Virtua, they have a good track record and people can see what you're trying to do. You can raise enough for the time being to kind of keep you kind of going and get you to the next step. But you don't get the large amounts, the tens of millions that you thought that you could have hoped at one point, but actually, you get the project so far, and then, you're going to go again, maybe to more like the institutions, maybe more kind of the VCs, the more traditional route, and you've got, it's actually a more holistic approach to the business rather than suddenly raising $50 million like some people did in 2017. They had no idea what to do with it. And obviously the temptation is then that the project never happens. They all go off to the Bahamas, and you never hear from them again. I mean,
well, that's right.
Obviously, you guys would do that. But.
Well, I mean, absolutely. And it would have been great to have got to our hard cap. Yeah. We don't actually need our hard cap really for 2 years. No. So we, we are away, and we are considering going VC to top up where we are, and we've got enough people in the currency now for the currency to be valid.
Good. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Everyone's tummies are rumbling, waiting for lunch. There's a few there. Yeah, if you wait for the microphone, you can just say who you are. That would be helpful.
Paulo 300 from AppCoins. We have just gone through an ICO last year, and just to say that it seems that would be difficult to convert Ethereum, and our experience is exactly the opposite. So we converted $10 million of Ethereum in 2 weeks. So there is these OTCs over the counters that they do everything legal. Of course, you have to have a bank account that accepts the money back, but it's pretty straightforward if you have the Ethereum.
Was that in Portugal, or was that?
We used 3 OTCs, one in US called Binary Financial, Cumberland, one in Singapore called Binary Financial, and the third one, I believe, was Uphold.
Okay.
So the 3, we kind of diversify it.
Good to know. There was another question. Yep.
Yeah, I'm Faye from Rovio. So the question is, I've been in the cryptocurrency for a while, and one thing I noticed is that there are a lot of ICOs, of course, and then especially for someone who doesn't know much about cryptocurrency, they can feel like a little bit like overwhelmed. And for example, I like a game, I wanna play that game, but then when I heard about the ICO and the new tokens and so on, I get confused. So the question is, so setting apart the fundraising, because I understand that you need to have the ICO in order to raise the funds, right? But then setting apart that part, what is the advantage of issuing a new token compared to, let's say, reusing already existing token? Which one is like better for companies, and which one is better for, let's say, for the gamers themselves? Thank you.
Sure. I don't mind starting. So if you look at the main currencies, a lot of them are fintech driven. So even Ethereum, most of its activity comes from fintech driven entities, and we're creating a new economy where players monetize their own skills. It seems completely detached from financial technology. And if you want to create an economy where participants benefit from its growth, pegging it to a larger coin is almost similar to creating a new company and pegging your shares to IBM's, right? You're creating a new economy. That's the first one. And the second, if you launch on a main currency, you lose all the benefits of having a proprietary token. So you are not able to hold the reserve because you need to buy it, and you're not able to quick start your community and entice partners because, again, it's like fiat. You need to buy these Ethereums to give them away. So it's harder to create your own token and create value for that. But if you are successful, then there is reward.
Yeah, I think one of the other major benefits of having your own currency inside of your game or your ecosystem is that you get to design what that ecosystem looks like. So for example, if you were to integrate Ethereum as the medium of exchange in your game, you would be subject to the economic policy of Ethereum, which is inflationary, right? So a certain amount is printed off new every single year. If you don't want that as your economy in the game, your monetary policy, then it would be good to create your own. And there's like tons of creative ways that you can do that. So I think what I really heard you asking at the beginning of your question was that like having to jump into the cryptocurrency game in order to buy the in-game assets would be a barrier to entry for a lot of new players. And so that would be a pain point. Is that kind of, that's where you started? Okay, so something that you could potentially do is sort of segment, like set aside a certain amount of tokens for a crowd sale, and then set aside another amount of tokens for once the players begin playing the game. So for players who don't sign up to be part of that token sale or the item sale, the pre-sale, where they actually have to go through the steps of getting a wallet and figuring out how to participate in that, you could just start giving cryptocurrency to the new players, and so that would be the way to introduce them and onboard them in that way. So that would be one way to just reduce that barrier to entry that I think would be really effective.
I completely agree with the last comment there, and I won't repeat which was just said there, but you have to create your own currency because you don't have flexibility. If you use an existing one, you don't have the cash to be able to buy that Ethereum in, to be able to, you know, incentivize people in the same way as if you're creating your own. So you have to do that. You don't have the cash otherwise. I think my experience coming in brand new to crypto, I found it all incredibly confusing, awfully. And I was going to go and buy some Bitcoin just to try it out. I just couldn't work out how to do it, how to set up the account, then how to get a wallet, how to link it. I thought it was so unconsumer friendly. What we're going to try and do our absolute best at is to make it as frictionless as possible, because I still don't think it's easy for Joe Public to buy crypto and fully understand the process. I think the idea of having, with your, we could do this easily with a Netflix-style subscription. You know, you pay your money, and when you pay your money, you're given a number of tokens in a ready-made wallet with some simple instructions. This is how you, buy and sell. I quite like the idea of that. But as I said earlier about having this closed sort of in-platform currency, and you only go to an exchange when you want to take your tokens out, I think that's going to be much more consumer friendly than having the exchange within the platform. But I'm kind of with you. It does seem confusing from the outside looking in. It's only when you go in you understand that's no good for a player coming in and not fully understanding. We have to make it simple.
When I first bought Ethereum a couple of years ago, it was so complicated for me. I ended up buying it from a dude at a crypto meetup in cash. Now picture me standing with a guy with about $1,000 in my hand, giving him my 0x address, and he was like holding my cash and asking, "What am I gonna do with it?" I was like,
Cool. Okay, any other questions? Alex has one. Just remind us who you are, Alex, so we know.
Sorry, Alex Amsel from FIG. Terra Virtua, you just mentioned the currency might be held internally within the system unless people want to actually take it out and exchange it, just to keep it simple. But do you not worry that the fact that it's volatile is just as confusing as all the other aspects? I mean, we've talked a bit about stablecoins already.
Not as such. So maybe I'm misled that. So the idea being every transaction you make within is just for speed and simplicity for the player, that they don't have to go through an exchange to make the transaction. Therefore, it's still secure because it's on the blockchain. But it's only when they want to take that currency out and maybe exchange it for Bitcoin or Ethereum or cash, fiat cash, that they then go to an external exchange.
Yeah, I think it was more getting at that currency is still highly volatile.
Yeah.
So for a gamer, 1 minute it's $1, the next minute it's $1.50, the next minute it's 10 cents. And I know from experience that is... I know from experience that when a gamer sees their credit changing in value very like even slightly, it's a huge issue. People do not understand exchange rates. Gamers do not understand exchange rates. Actually, they think you're conning them.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how to respond to the idea that we're conning them, but there will be, of course, there'll be an easy, ready ticker for them to see what the value is. Yeah, you can't hide the fact that it is a currency, and the currency will be comparable to other crypto as well as fiat in their own country. I think what we're not trying to do is say there's an internal exchange to make it easy, and it's therefore difficult for you to take your coins out. The minute they want to take them out will be quick and easy, but to speed up the process, because the blockchain can get hot and bothered if you've got so many transactions going on in the platform. You know, we all know about having Siberian mining for this, so that's the bit we want to avoid. That doesn't mean to say they can't quickly and instantaneously take their coins out.
And presumably you'll be pricing everything in the system will be priced in Terra Virtual tokens. So
Exactly.
So a game will be whatever 10 tokens. It won't. No matter what the dollar value of a Terra token is, within the system it will still remain.
Yeah, it won't change. It will be token led as the currency. Yes.
Well, so in that case, you as the platform holder has to eat the difference if the value goes down 30%.
Yeah, exactly. We take the burden. Yeah, and that doesn't mean to say then we can't make promotions. You know, I mean, we have that ability to promote, obviously with the blessing of the developers we're working with. But that's the burden we take. Yeah.
Good. Well, unless there are any more questions, I think I'll just say thank you very much to the panel and give them a big round of applause.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.